It was like when you drink too much soda at the movie theater, but you refuse to go.
Like, no way, the movie's almost over. I can make it.
I know. It was that caliber of having to go when you don't even want to sit through the credits for the extra scene, but you know you have to.
I did that in Iron Man 3? No, Iron Man 2. He got to the end of the movie and was like, nope, I just have to pee. I'm just going to miss this giant climactic battle.
I'm so bad with it. I don't want to get off on a tangent too much because it is recording, but I saw Guardians of the Galaxy for the second time at the theater because we brought like more family members and stuff like that. And I had already seen it. I already knew what was coming after the credits or whatever, but I refused. I got up out of our chair, and it was like I felt like I could hardly walk. It was horrible. Anyways.
All right, cool. All right, so the next part, after a brief pause, how do you feel about the world layout and getting around the map? I'm sorry. Let's stay back a little bit. Let's stay at the actual world map where you've got the tower, you've got Earth, you've got Venus and the Moon, and then the reef.
Yeah.
And then the PvP section.
Okay, so I'm going to answer your question, but to answer it, I'm going to step back even just like a little bit further and say that first and foremost, I love how, at least on the PlayStation controller, you can hit that center touchpad button. Your character pulls out his ghost, and then at literally any time, no matter what you're doing, you can just hold down the triangle button on the controller to load yourself into orbit. And from orbit, you have your map where you can choose to go to any of the planets and do any of the content that you want. And I personally love it. I feel like that map setup that they have is one of the things that works really well with the mouse pointery control system, whatever, that they've gone with. Once you click on a planet, you go into a map of the planet, and you can then choose like what missions you want to go on. I don't know, like you were saying before. I think it comes down to preference as far as if you like choosing what you're going to do in a game, like with that kind of setup, but since that was the decision that they made, I think that the big map works really, really well. Aesthetically, I always like looking at it, and I think it works. How about you?
As a sci-fi nerd, I got really giddy at the idea of my ship constantly waiting for me in orbit.
Yeah.
As opposed to landing on the surface.
Okay.
It's just like a futurist piece of technology that I think is really cool. It's like these ships, like it would be so expensive and so resource intense to develop a ship that constantly goes in and out of orbit.
Mm-hmm.
That the suggestion is that don't ever take it in and out of an atmosphere. Leave the ship in orbit and find a quicker way in and out. And so, I really like that piece of sci-fi technology. It's really convenient for the game to be able to press that center button and then transport yourself back up to the ship.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's just a little clunky, though, getting around. Because you pull yourself up into that ship, and then you've got the image of your ship sitting there, and then it says, select destination, and then that sort of progresses across as you select a new destination, right? So you hit select destination, and then you have to go to the world where you again manipulate through the thumbstick to get to the world you want to go to. You then have to select the mission you want to take in that world. Then you have to go back out to the main menu, and then you have to hit select destination, and then you have to press and hold triangle to prove that you want to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a fairly intense loading screen.
Yeah, loading in the game is pretty horrendous.
Yeah, and that's something I think we should be getting much better at. And this feels like this feels like an older game because the loading screens are quite long. In fact, it feels like if you're going a greater distance, it takes longer and longer to load the next world.
Mm-hmm.
I was bored of loading screens when they first debuted on the PlayStation, and I've been more and more excited that some games are better at preloading, and this game comes with a 15 gig install?
Oh, you know what? I'm not sure. I bought the digital copy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and there's still load screens like that. In that case, the whole game's loaded on your system.
Yeah, I've been trying to determine, as far as the loading is concerned, if it's loading texture data, just like messing around with RAM and stuff like that. If it's purely kind of like connecting to their servers so that you can actually play the game and things like that, it's probably a combination of the two. Because, like, for example, one of the things I notice when I go into the Crucible menu to do a multiplayer match.
Crucible is what I was trying to remember.
Yeah, and then the first time you go into a multiplayer match, at least for me, it always takes a long time to place you amongst that 12 players that you're going to battle with. However, once you complete a Crucible match, if you sit in that matchmaking window and just choose to automatically get launched into another game, the loading is a lot quicker, as in it's just taking those same players that you just played with, rearranging the teams a little bit. I don't know if it's balancing them or if it's just straight up changing them up, and plopping you down onto a new map. When it does that, it seems like it cuts the loading by about a third. And so you're still sitting there waiting, with your ship flying above whatever planet you're about to go to and whatnot, but it goes really, really fast in regards to connecting you with like 12 people. Yeah. But still, it's still, I don't know, I sit there like I'm just thinking about life during the load screen. Checking Twitter, like you can go while it's loading. You can go to the bathroom. You can run into a different room of the house and get something to drink or eat, and come back, and you'll just barely be landing on the planet.
True. Actually, that's a good point. I know. I mean, some missions are single player, but some missions are also multiplayer. A couple that require 2 or 3 other people, and it just instantly matches you with 3 people. So I wonder if sometimes, if the issue, it doesn't take long to match you, but if it takes extra long to make sure everybody's loading the same level and make sure that all gets smoothed out before it drops you into the game. Because I will admit that the experience playing with other people is quite smooth.
Yeah, it is. And I think that has to do with loading data into the servers. Destiny is one of those games where they literally, to my understanding, track every single bullet that gets fired out of any of your weapons is tracked. That's how they're able to put those stats up there. Like players, during this week fired off 17.2 billion bullets at each other in multiplayer and stuff like that. It's tracking stats well beyond kill-death ratios and stuff like that. In regards to the menu interface for the we'll call it the planetary overworld, if you will. When you hit level 20, and between, I think, levels 18 and 20 or 17 and 20, more things open up for you. For example, I'm not sure if you've reached the point yet where on the left side of the screen, once you're level 20, certain information loads up. Like you can always do, every single day there's like a daily heroic mission you can do. You can choose to do the weekly heroic mission, and there's even one, a third one that's like a multiplayer thing for the day, and like that multiplayer thing might offer you like bonus experience or bonus Crucible reward points. The daily mission is not usually, I think it's always a story mission that you've, like I said, a mission that you would have done progressing through the story, except this time it'll be on like a heroic setting, set to level 20 or 22, and the heroic modifiers do things like they might make enemy melee damage stronger, or it'll do things like where any of the weapon you're going to pick up isn't going to be for the weapon you're using. So for example, it's like if you're using your special weapon, you'll only pick up primary weapon. If you're using your primary weapon, you'll only pick up special weapon ammo. And so it does things to kind of like change up the gameplay for missions that you've already done on a daily basis. The other thing that they add next to the Crucible circle on the map that you can choose to do multiplayer is they add one for the Vanguard. It's blue instead, and what that lets you do is you go into the Vanguard and you can do strike missions without actually having to click on the planet, then click on a strike mission. You choose what level of strike mission you want to do. I believe it's through like level 18 all the way up to level 26 or 28. Different levels net you different rewards, whether it's gear or experience points and whatnot. and it randomly chooses one for you. And if you don't have a party of people with you, it'll also randomly put you into parties for that level. So it's like they do streamline certain aspects of the game later on.
Okay. Well, in that case, I'm just going to mess with your order a little bit here. Then how do you feel about the game's competitive multiplayer overall?
It's honestly one of the things that I'm in love with right now, probably even more so than doing like raids and strike missions and things like that. I guess I should say, I don't normally get into competitive multiplayer in games. I think that the last game I fell in love with multiplayer-wise was Battlefield Bad Company 2 when I was playing it on the PlayStation 3. Like we were saying earlier, destructible environments and things like that. It was pretty groundbreaking for its time. And before that, I was into like Halo 1 and 3 big time. This game, though, is like the first game where I was like, wow, I got a ton of friends playing it. Like, let's create a clan on Bungie.net, and let's get that clan a Facebook group going and stuff like that, and let's try to network all these people who are playing and enjoying the game across multiple platforms and just pool together our knowledge and our experiences and create like places to go and talk about this outside of Bungie.net. And I never do things like that, nor have I ever done anything like that. And so I think the fact that I felt compelled to actually jump into that aspect of the game, at least for me personally, means that at least as of right now, it definitely feels like something special, and I hope it continues to be that. However, it could also be because I didn't play Halo Reach and Halo 4 and like Halo ODST competitively and stuff like that, and I don't play a lot of shooters. And so for as much as I am burnt out on the genre, it's been a long time since like a multiplayer mode in a first-person shooter has spoken to me to the point where I played it more than, say, 10 matches before being like, been there, done that,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, okay. Then just regarding the social integration, what is a clan? How does that work?
Okay, cool. A clan is something you can create on Bungie.net, and the way that it works is you create your clan name and you choose kind of like your emblem and things like that, and it's essentially linking Bungie.net with either your Xbox or your PlayStation account. Technically on Bungie.net, when you go to create a clan, the first thing it's going to force you to do is to create a group. Once your group gets 3 members to join, it can officially become a clan. And a clan, I'm actually still learning a lot about it. It's your ability to take that game to the next step. Like, for example, we named our clan Guardian Section 9, which is a Ghost in the Shell anime reference. And what that lets us do is when we're playing online and we're in multiplayer, people can see underneath our gamer tag, it'll say Guardian Section 9, and maybe they'll see that they're playing with 3 members of Guardian Section 9, and they can go on to Bungie.net and they can, just like talk with us. You can actually make alliances with other clans online. So I guess like any other MMO type experience, even though this is a first-person shooter, Bungie is letting you actively create, we'll say clans, they're guilds. They have the potential to be guilds, especially because you can get into 3 to 6 player raids in the game, which are incredibly hard. So, besides the player versus player aspects of the game, you do have that the ability to bond together with like 6 players and try to take on the game's hardest missions and get epic loots and stuff like that. And so your clan can be a social experience. You can treat it as like a hive mind of information to share with other players. If you want to get into our role-playing aspects of the game, I imagine you could have alliances and rivalries with other clans and stuff like that. Or like us, you can just be a bunch of people who just want to get together and have fun, and for whatever reason share the same name. I don't even know why I did it. I just felt compelled to. Yeah.
So is it in any way similar to guilds from MMORPG games?
Oh yeah. I think I mentioned that. Maybe I didn't mention it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I missed it though.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing.
Okay.
I don't even know why there's the difference in terminology, other than like you were saying, maybe it was one of those things Bungie wanted to do just to be a little bit different,
Okay.
Yeah,
And I don't
a
know,
clan is a
maybe
guild.
it's just clans in Destiny and guilds in other places.
Right, right.
Um, yeah, I don't know if there's
So
much of a connotative difference there.
the interesting thing though, and it probably has to do with interface more so, is that you can't actually manage any aspects of your clan or guild through Destiny's interface. You have to log on separately onto Bungie.net to manage all that kind of stuff, whether it's creating it, accepting invitations and stuff like that. I mean, I guess ultimately, as far as I know, like all of the consoles, maybe except for 360, have like web browser interfaces and stuff like that. So if you have like a mouse and a keyboard plugged into your PS4 or whatever, you could still do all that stuff from your TV screen and whatnot. But I wish those aspects were a lot more integrated. Like I wish while I was playing Destiny that there was a place that I could go where it said, such and such gamer name wants to become a part of your clan, and I could just from in Destiny go like, oh cool, look at that person's gamer tag or profile, if it even means anything, and be like accept, decline, etc.
Okay. All right. So you still have to manage your clan outside of the game, and
Yeah.
that's okay. That's a little.
It is what it is.
little clunky. All right. So changing gears entirely. Regarding the game's art direction. This specifically deals with like the aesthetics, like you were mentioning earlier, textures. We'll do level design in here too. How about?
Yeah, sure.
And then color palettes and just like the vision of the world, the sci-fi aspects of it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
oh, man.
Jump right in.
Okay. Whew. All right. It was one of for me ever since the first like touching down. I don't even think you touched down when you're resurrected rather in the very beginning of the game's storyline, and you're walking through dark tunnels with a flashlight. Can we also include the game's audio in this, or do you want to talk about it separately? Like the whole presentation package, I guess.
Yeah, art direction counts. And sound is art.
Yeah, I was blown away. I was like utterly floored. Everything, like you were saying, from the texture detail to the sound design. I think the sound design of this game is especially impressive, and I'm not even playing with like a surround sound setup or something like that. Just the amount of detail they have going on in the sound design of the world always kind of astonishes me. That somebody recorded and or created all these finite electrically sounds and enemy groans and stuff like that. The game also has an incredibly beautiful lighting engine that's it's like a real-time lighting engine, and all the levels that you're in and stuff like that have like a day and night cycle. So while one level might be oversaturated with like oranges, reds, and yellows during the day, when it's nighttime, that same space may be more bluish or purple or gray until the sun rises again. I'm really big on lighting in games, and I think that this game definitely has blown me away with its lighting engine overall. And I like how Earth looks very different, both during day and night, from the Moon and from Venus and from Mars. And like so, not only do kind of like the core aesthetics on these planets look very different from each other, but they look very different from each other yet again, depending on the time of day that you're going there. But yeah, I'll toss it off to you, because yeah, just what do you think of it?
Actually, I thought it was kind of bland. It's funny.
Okay.
It's not that I necessarily disagree with what you said. You're right. The colors change depending on the time of day.
Mm-hmm.
And there are different colors for each planet, Earth, Moon, Venus in particular.
Mm-hmm.
But the level design is almost identical in each place. I feel like all it is a coat of paint, as opposed to a decidedly different world. The big thing that stood out to me is it told me that I was going to the moon, and I went to the moon and I was like, sweet, and gravity's going to be really low here, and I jumped, and it was the exact same gravity on the moon.
Oh, okay.
and then I started thinking, well, what else is the same? And some of this is just the way Bungie designs levels. And I never warmed to the level design of Halo. For as much as I played Halo,
Mm-hmm.
they designed these giant like vast levels where you can run from one end to the other, and you've got tons of space on either side. So you're not confined to like the hallways of like a an interior shooter or
Mhm.
something even like Half-Life, where you're traveling down a road and you're going through a town, and the town only has so many places to go. So Bungie decided to make these giant vast levels. The problem is that I don't feel like they populated them with anything. Um, except
I will agree with that.
except bumps and ridges, and
Yeah.
there's a little bit of detail thrown into Destiny here, where there are some roads like on Venus where they have cars in the way. It felt very much like The Last of Us, like this
Mhm.
semi-post-apocalyptic experience where there's junk in the road. Um, but the double jump makes short work of all of that.
Yeah, yeah.
um, so luckily they also got rid of a lot of the backtracking that Halo had to do. That always really bothered me about Halo, is you had to not only go through a level once, but then you had to go through it a second time to get out of there.
Mhm.
And Destiny has this thing where once you finish the mission, at the end of the mission, it just ports you out.
Right.
Gives you about 30 seconds to collect any stuff on the ground, and then you're out. So that's nice, but the basic level design trouble I'm having, or that I had with Halo, is still in Destiny, which is there are these really vast, wide open levels with not that much to see or do, and in particular, like each world feels like it's just, like I said, a different coat of paint. It's a different set of color. It's a different palette. That's true. Venus has a whole bunch of plants
Mhm.
and rock outcroppings, and the moon has the gray dirt. But there's just this general ebb and flow to the way that their levels work. There's a hill here, and then there's this little rock outcropping that you can hide behind. None of the places feel unique, like I have to do anything different for them. They could all take place in the same world, and you could just say, oh, this is the jungle, and this is the desert.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Um, and so there's nothing unique about going to the moon versus Venus versus, say, taking a road trip across the United States.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a big letdown. That's a big opportunity that they missed, because with something like Venus, you could have acid rain. You could have an
Okay.
environment
Okay.
that's really difficult to survive in, and so you can only be outside for a certain amount of time before it starts to eat away your gear. You've got to go back under
Yeah.
something. The moon has different gravity, and if you get shot too many times, maybe like you suffocate or you start to, your vision starts to blur. Like there are a lot of options that they really could have played with that they didn't in the world layout.
Like that stuff that you're mentioning right now, you're right. I didn't really think about it like that, where if they would have incorporated ideas like that, the ambitious nature of the game would have been it's doubled right there
Mm-hmm.
with those few ideas. I
Yeah.
guess the one thing that I get caught up with in games like this, and I say caught up within a, I don't know, I guess a good way for me. One
Sure.
thing that I enjoy is, for example, like going to the moon and you land there and you're exploring it and it's moony and there's bases and stuff like that. I don't like that there's nothing to do in these bases when you look at them and they're all like ramshacked and there's enemies on the outside and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Overall, I wish there was a lot more, say, Fallout 3 and Mass Effect in this game as far as the depth and complexity to these worlds and the ability to, say, role play with NPCs and things like that. There isn't any of that, and I totally wish there was.
Yeah. There's almost nothing to interact with in the game.
Right, yeah, you can collect spin metal on Earth, helium cells or whatever they're called on the moon, which is just orange spin metal, like crafting components. But back to the moon, like, so you're on the surface of the moon, and spoilers, like the storyline takes you into the core of the moon, where you find out that the inside of the moon has been hollowed out, and like these aliens are kind of like building up this chunk of their civilization in there, and so you go from the surface to the inside and the lighting changes and it's more like blacks and yellows and oranges and alien architecture, and it's all gorgeous, like visually and like art design, and like I see things like that and I traverse that experience through the levels, and I'm just kind of like, I melt in the best possible way by how sci-fi it is, because I feel like games that capture science fiction aesthetics to the level that like Bungie has achieved with this game don't really come along too often. At least not with like $500 million visuals behind them, you know.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're right. You know, it's like the beauty of the game is outside of how good it feels to shoot things in the game. It is really skin deep. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, and I feel like 6 years and $500 million, they could have done a lot more. It honestly, overall, Destiny feels like a half-made game for me. That first half is really well done, but it's most of what's really well done about that first half is either the mechanics that they've been playing with since Halo, or the mechanics that they added basically by co-opting Borderlands. And even then, the weapons, and maybe this is something we should have discussed in the mechanics section, but like the weapons are still pretty limited. Whereas in something like Borderlands, you've got a sniper rifle, but you can also have like the acid shot, and you can have all these other effects that get added onto every weapon, and you have this wide breadth of weapons and options. Destiny still has like your pretty standard pistol, rifle, rocket launcher.
Well, it's funny that you mention it. This might actually be something that you'll experience if you decide to dig into like the end game of the. I thought that at first also, and I was somebody who was like, I would have like an assault rifle with like the red fire symbol on it, the solar ammo in it or whatever, and I'd find like a little bit of a better assault rifle with stats that I actually wanted that had the purple like void damage symbol on it, and so I would get rid of my fire one. I'd start using like the void one or whatever, and then I start doing like these heroic strike missions and stuff like that, and things start happening where we get bombarded with like 4 of those moon wizards at the same time, and they have like those orange shields around them and stuff like that. And I learned through playing with somebody who I haven't played with yet that like really what you need to do is you need solar ammo weapons available, even if you're not using them during the whole mission, because if you don't have solar ammo, your chances of punching through like those the wizard armor bubbles is like slim to none, and you're probably going to wipe there and or not be able to complete the mission. So like while it's not as like flashy as Borderlands is so cool. Like you start shooting, like you said, like an enemy with like acid ammo, and it's like you can see the splashes and it looks
you can see them catch fire.
Yeah, and like while this game doesn't, the presentation of that stuff isn't as dramatic or like stylish. Things like that do become important later on in the game.
Yeah, I felt like that was a very tactile or portion of Borderlands, and that's missing in Destiny.
Okay, interesting.
Whereas in Borderlands, I could look at the gun and it would say, oh, hey, this one is a fire gun, and it'll do this sort of fire damage. And then you could see that happen on certain enemies, and you could see that some enemies were better protected against it, and others weren't. And so you would keep this cache of weapons in your inventory, because if you ever needed to change weapons to be more effective against a different enemy, you could. Whereas in Destiny, I feel like that's really put to the back burner, even if it becomes clearer later on. But like my friend Tom and I were sitting there going, what does this symbol mean? And there was no information in there.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
Whereas Borderlands, you could see it, and it told you what it did. And Destiny just sort of gave you this little symbol, and maybe you had to figure it out later, but like, it's not present in the game, and that's what you want out of a game like this.
Yeah.
It's like, give me these weapons, tell me what they're special, what they do, and then I'll figure out where to use them. And I think that could have been much more present, but that's more in the mechanics again. So okay, art direction, level design, aesthetics, the sounds are actually really good. One of the things I noticed is that I was tracking enemies based on where I thought their sound was coming from, and it was pretty accurate. And I love getting that immersed in a game. Yeah. Where I'm sitting there thinking, okay, which way did not just which way did I see him go, but how close do I hear him? So it was engaging me on at least those two senses.